Okay.
On 5, 4, 3, 2.
If you're sitting at home, you're probably wanting to ask Mr. Browne a question, and it may be even almost rude, and I have admitted that I'm a friend of Harry Browne's, but let me pretend I'm you. Tell me, Mr. Browne, what qualifies you to be president? You haven't even been in politics.
Isn't that wonderful? As a matter of fact, I have never been in politics, and like so many people, I didn't vote for many years because I couldn't see any difference between the candidates that were offered, and I didn't see any point in voting for one person because he may not grow the government as fast as the other person would. But the fact is, we need somebody in Washington who understands that government doesn't work, that the answer is not to reform government, not to find somebody better able to manage it, but to reduce government to the absolute minimum possible. And we need, more than anything else, a president who has the will and determination to make this happen, no matter what Congress wants, no matter what the press says, no matter what kind of flack that he gets. But we have not had such a president in my entire life, and as a result, government has gotten bigger and bigger, whether Republicans or Democrats were in the White House or whether Republicans or Democrats controlled Congress. And it is time that one of us was up there to say no to Congress, to say now to Congress. If you want to balance the budget, do it now. If you're going to make spending cuts, do it now. If you're going to have tax cuts, do it now, not in some 7-year pie-in-the-sky future that may or may not ever arrive. Oh, great. Could we just back up a couple of sentences?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, do it again, but it's great stuff.
Yeah, right. It'll never be the second time. I'm gonna have to pick it up in the middle of the thought rather than at the beginning.
What we'll probably do is pick it up from the question, because we're editing.
Okay. Yeah, I guess you're right.
What was the question?
Okay, we'll just try it again.
The whole thing?
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay. Well, you got my pitch to the family at home, and I turn to Harry and I say, what qualifies you to be president after all? We've never seen you in politics before.
Yes, isn't that wonderful to have somebody who isn't a lifetime politician running for president, somebody who knows what it is to pay taxes every year.
But wait, Harry, we're used to seeing people who have political history, someone who knows the system.
Somebody who believes that government works and that he knows how to make it work and that he can take programs that are failing and turn them into gold. Well, government doesn't work, and it is about time we had somebody in Washington who recognized that fact. My chief qualification is that I have the will and determination to turn this thing around once and for all, that I will just say no to Congress, that I will just say now to Congress, that if you want to balance the budget, you've got to do it now. If you want to cut taxes, you've got to do it now. If you want to cut spending, you've got to do it now, not in some 7-year off pie-in-the-sky future that may or may not ever come, and in fact we know will never come. Politicians know only one thing, and that is power, and they're not going to give it up easily. It's got to be one of us who goes to Washington and is more concerned about what he can achieve in 4 years in office than he is about getting reelected. Somebody who is determined to bring government to a standstill and turn it around.
You know, we've heard some of this before, someone who says, well, I'm the one who can change things. You can't help but have people be skeptical.
Of course.
Why should we believe you? Why should the public say, oh, this guy will go, become our president, and he will actually do what he promises?
Well, I can think of 2 reasons that I offer in my defense. Number one, I didn't read the polls this morning and decided that this is what I believed. I have believed this for 35 years. I wrote books in the 1970s that explained why government was messing up the economy, why it is that government doesn't work, and how we have to get government out of these things in order to solve the problem. So this is nothing new with me. It's something I believe with my very being. The second thing is I was offered money from the federal government, federal matching funds in the primary season. I am the first politician in the history of this country to qualify for federal matching funds and actually turn them down, because I don't believe in welfare for politicians any more than for individuals or corporations. Now, if I won't take the 30 pieces of silver in order to get elected, you know I'm not going to sell out once I'm safely in office.
Okay, it's a good argument, I must say. Are there things that you can do right away if you become president in spite of a hostile? I mean, I've heard you say, this is what I'll do the first day in office. And I thought, in a way, it was almost funny, but it really struck home. Say that again.
Well, as a matter of fact, there's a great deal the president can do without the consent of Congress. On my first day in office, I can go through the Federal Register and tear out all the regulations that previous presidents have put there that run up the prices of the things you buy and hold down the wages that you earn. I can bring American troops home from overseas so that we worry about defending the United States instead of trying to defend the world. I can end all affirmative action programs within the federal government on my first day in office. Another thing I can do is something positive about crime without increasing the size of government. I can empty the federal prisons of people who are nonviolent criminals and are no threat to anyone, and in turn make room for the thugs, the murderers, the muggers, and the rapists who are terrorizing citizens on the streets because they're getting out on early release and plea bargaining in order to make room for pot smokers and other people who are no threat to anyone. This is something you can do about crime without increasing sentences, without raising taxes, without building more prisons, without more government.
And without approval from the Congress.
Absolutely.
These are very powerful things that you can do by presidential edict.
Yes, if
Sign a paper.
If the president wants to reduce government, he can do it. If we simply have not had in my lifetime a president who was determined to make government smaller. But I am that person, and I'm going to do it.
Yeah, it's a good point, Harry, because people, I think the people out there are just like me. They're thinking, even if you become president, you become hopeless, you become mired in all this stuff, and that you'll be helpless and you won't be able to carry through with the programs that you propose.
Well, if I were a politician, that would be true, because I would be so concerned about the next election and satisfying this special interest group and that special interest group on whom I would be depending for my reelection. But that isn't what I'm going to Washington for. I'm going there for one purpose, so that I can reduce government to a size that I can come home and then live the last years of my life in peace and freedom, because that's why I'm doing this.
Are you saying that you would not run for presidency twice?
I wouldn't say that I wouldn't run, but that would not be my concern while I was there. I would hope that I would not have to run. I mean, 4 years is enough for anybody.
Good point. So you're not a professional politician, is what
No,
you're
I've
saying.
never run for office, and in fact, I didn't vote for many, many years, just like so many people didn't vote, because I couldn't see any difference between the candidates. Why vote for one person because he's going to increase government at only 4% a year instead of 5% a year as his opponent would? We have been so attuned to the idea that you must vote against somebody, that you must pick the lesser of two evils and keep this other person from getting back into the White House, whatever it may be. That's not the way we should vote. We should vote for what we want and take a stand and say, we're not going to take it anymore. And this time, I hope you will vote for the person that stands for what you want. If you want smaller government, vote for the candidate who gives you smaller government, and not for the one who will give you the least big government.
That plays right into the big question of people saying, I don't want to throw my vote away on a third party or a fourth party candidate.
Yes, and if you believe in smaller government, if you want government to be smaller, the worst way you could waste your vote would be to cast it for somebody you know is going to make government larger. And Bill Clinton, Bob Dole, Ross Perot, it wouldn't matter which one of them were elected. You know the government's going to be bigger 4 years from today. We need to have somebody who wants huge spending cuts now, huge tax cuts now, a balanced budget now, and has laid out a plan by which this is going to happen. Not just some slogans about government's too big, taxes are too high, we need to do something about it, and I'm your man, and so forth. I've laid out a program in the book, Why Government Doesn't Work, explaining what the budget would be for the next 6 years, explaining precisely what I'll do about welfare, education, how I'm going to get us from where we are now to smaller government.
I love it. I love it. But you're going to run into a lot of flack, aren't you? The things. I mean, I'm sure you know that already. But things like the war on drugs. I've heard your statement that you just want to kill the war on drugs, and yet everybody's. I mean, there's druggies everywhere and crime and everything, and you're going to stop the war on drugs?
Of course. I am sick to death of pushers on high school campuses and muggers on the streets trying to support a $100 a day habit, and gangs in the cities fighting over drug profits and monopoly territories. We didn't have those things in the days when I was growing up. When I was a kid, 12 years old, I used to walk to the movies on Friday night, come home at 10 o'clock at night, walk a mile to my home. No fear of muggers, no fear of gangs, no drug pushers on the streets at all. What changed? In the 1960s, the federal government declared war on drugs, created a gigantic black market in drugs as a result of it. Criminals took over the whole process of processing and selling drugs, and the result is what we see today, turmoil in the inner cities. The only time in American history that we ever had anything remotely similar to this was during alcohol prohibition of the 1920s. And when prohibition ended in 1933, the crime rate peaked and it immediately started dropping year by year by year until the early 1960s when the federal government declared war on drugs. If we care anything about our civilization, our cities, our children, we have got to end this insane war on drugs before it kills us.
Can you give us a couple of the steps as to what would happen first and second and third on this killing the war on drugs?
We would repeal all the drug laws. Before we had drug laws, we did not have muggers on the streets. Before we had drug laws, we did not have children being preyed upon on high school campuses because there was no profit in it for the drug manufacturers. Once you make it a criminal enterprise, you then run up the price because now it includes a component for evading the law. And once that happens, it becomes the province of gangs and criminals. And these people, of course, fight over their territories with guns and violence, whereas Bayer and Burroughs Wellcome will fight over their territories with advertising and other non-violent, peaceful ways to do it.
What I'm hearing here is a touchy subject, legalizing drugs. Is that what you're saying?
Of course. It is the only way we are ever going to end the drug problems that we have in America today. Will people
You're saying people can go into the store and buy heroin?
They could at one time in our history, and yet despite the unrestricted availability of drugs, there were no drug problems. That doesn't mean nobody ever took drugs. Of course they did. But the number that were taking drugs when it was legal was far, far fewer than it is today. The number who became addicted to it and had problems in their families was far fewer than it was today, and there were no crime problems associated with it in any way whatsoever because the drug companies didn't fight over their territories with Tommy guns and violence. They fought over them with advertising and sales methods.
Okay, is there a parallel in some other country? I don't know if it exists or not, but is there a parallel where there's no war on drugs and therefore the drug problem is lower?
The countries that have partially legalized drugs in some way or other have eliminated some of the problems that we take for granted here. But until you get rid of all of the legal problems with it, you will still have problems. If you make part of it legal and part of it illegal, then the criminals, of course, turn from those areas that are now legal and focus on the areas that are illegal. We have to wipe the whole slate clean.
So in other words, you're not saying, well, we'll legalize marijuana, but we won't legalize heroin.
That's right.
Not cool.
That's right, because then it will all be concentrated on heroin and we'll have all the problems focused there. Now understand, of course, that I'm not saying that it's a good thing to take drugs or even a bad thing to take drugs. This is something that each individual has to decide for himself, and families have to decide for themselves. But let's repeal the income tax. Let's give families the resources so that one spouse can stay home if they want to raise the children during the formative years and teach the child what's right and what's wrong, what's good and what's bad. Turn this over to the government and you are going to have the kind of problems that we have today where our moral authorities are people like Bill Clinton, Bob Dole, Teddy Kennedy, Jesse Helms, people that we do not consider moral paragons. In fact, they're the worst panderers and street walkers as they go out and troll for votes in the street. What we need is to restore these things to the families, and the families make the decisions, but the families have to have the resources to do so. Today they're strapped so dry, they're so spread so thin that they can't do anything about these things, and they're helpless. They have to leave it to school programs, to child care centers, to government programs to try to educate their children.
Okay, well, when you say strapped and stretched so thin, you're really talking about income tax.
Absolutely.
You come back to income tax a lot.
Well, of course, because it matters so much. Family values. These politicians like Bill Clinton and Bob Dole, they become movie critics and they start designing school uniforms as the way to implement family values. The best thing you can do is repeal the income tax and give families the resources to implement their own values, to make the decisions for themselves and to have the time to spend with their children. Today, 48% of the national income goes into federal, state, and local taxes. 48%. That's virtually half. That means if you and your spouse are both working, one of you is in effect working for the government and one for your family. What if one of you could stay home when the child is 8 years old and 10 years old and 12 years old and going into puberty and be able to explain to the child and deal with all the problems as they come up instead of farming them out to schools and child care centers where they're going to be taught by people whose values are completely different. The best thing we can do for family values in this country is to repeal the income tax and get the government out of all moral decisions.
That's quite a leap, and I like it. I've never heard connected those two phrases before. Repeal the income tax to improve family values.
And it is the only thing that makes sense. It is the only thing that makes sense because Bob Dole can rant and rail against the Hollywood producer.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you. That's very good. We're just going to pause for a second and come in and talk to you.
Okay. And then I'm going to look in the camera and I'm going to say, and I'll answer the same question, but as a pitch.
Stand by. On 5, 4, 3, 2.
Harry, how do you see, what do you see in the future for America? What's America going to look like 4 years from now?
Well, if Bill Clinton, Bob Dole, or Ross Perot is elected president, we know what it's going to be like. Government will be bigger, the tax burden will be greater, the government will be more expensive, intrusive, and it'll interfere more with your business and your personal life. But I hope that if I'm elected president, we can look back 4 years from now and say, this is what has changed. Now the inner cities are safe. Now you can walk anywhere you want in a city. I'd like to start this again.
Go ahead.
Okay.
But if I'm elected president.
Yes.
Covert, start from the top.
Harry, let's take a look at the future if you can. What do you think America will look like 4 years from now?
Well, if Bill Clinton, Ross Perot, or Bob Dole is elected, we know what it's going to be like. Government will be bigger, more expensive, more intrusive. It will interfere more with your business or your personal life. But if I'm elected president, I think we will see a much, much different America. I think you'll be able to walk through a city without fear. I think that the inner cities will be much less prone to violence. There won't be drug dealers on every corner. There won't be gangs fighting over monopoly territories. Your money that you earn will be yours to spend, to save, to give away as you see fit. Your life will be your own. You'll be able to dictate the values of your own family instead of having them dictated from Washington. You'll be able to afford to put your child in a school that teaches the values that you want to see rather than those that the bureaucrats think is best for you. You'll be able to save up for that business you've always wanted to go into. You'll be able to help your favorite church or charity or cause in a way you've never been able to before. Every dollar you make will be yours to spend, to save, to give away as you see fit. And your parents and grandparents will have a safe retirement without having to fear that the politicians will take their benefits away from them. And your children will be able to grow up in a land of opportunity in which everything they make will be theirs to spend and save and give away. This is the kind of America I want to see. This is the America the Founding Fathers gave us and we threw away. I want to see us get it back. That wasn't all that great. I'd just soon do it again.
Okay, let's do it again.
You can do better than that? Okay, let's see it.
That's good, Harry. That's
That
good.
was pretty good.
That was good. You went to camera just at the right point. I was afraid you were going to forget.
Perfect.
Perfect. It was perfect. Okay. Harry, how do you see it in the future? What is America going to look like in 4 years? Let me say it over again. Harry, picture the America 4 years from now. What do you think it's going to look like? What's going to happen?
Well, if Ross Perot or Bob Dole or Bill Clinton is elected, we know what it's going to be like. Government's going to be bigger, more expensive, more intrusive. It's going to interfere more with your business or your personal life. But if I'm elected president, I see an America in which you can finally walk through the streets of the city at night without fear because there won't be gangs and pushers and muggers on the streets. The inner cities will be a lot less prone to violence because we will have eliminated the welfare system and federal housing projects which breed violence. And every dollar you make will be yours to spend, to save, to give away as you see fit. You'll be able to control your family life with the values that you think are best, not those of Bill Clinton or Bob Dole. Your parents and grandparents will have a safe retirement, no longer fearing that the Congress of the United States is going to change their benefits and take it away from them. And your children are going to be able to grow up in a land of opportunity in which everything they make will be theirs to spend, to save, to give away as they see fit. No Social Security tax. Instead, they can put 5% of their income away and be millionaires by the time they're 65. This is the kind of America I want to see. I hope this is the kind of America you want to see too. It is possible. Don't despair. We can have it if we do something about it, and we start now.
You know, somebody said to me once, I wish I'd been there when they tore down the Berlin Wall. Boy, and I like that because I picture it. Imagine how exciting it must have been for the Germans that went there and brick by brick tore down the Berlin Wall. Well, you got a chance to do that now. You and I do, both of us. We've got a chance to make not little changes, not, well, decrease the income tax by this much or that much or whatever. We've got a chance to do something big, turn the government around. Instead of having it get bigger and bigger and bigger by 2% by Doyle or 5% by Mr. Clinton, how about we make it smaller, down to half its size, chop the taxes right out. You like what Harry Browne has to say, and you want to help, then help, for crying out loud. A vote, hey, that's only part of it. Give a vote, but also call the number that you can see right across here and make a contribution. They'll help you. They're very courteous. Make some help. It's time to tear down the Berlin Wall. You want to help this campaign, want to help Harry Browne get elected. For crying out loud, contribute. Don't wait until it's too late, okay? Call the number on the screen, call it now, and make a contribution. It's time to help tear down that Berlin Wall.
Good.
Okay, we're still rolling, I hope.
We're rolling.
Harry, for people who have been watching the program, I'm sure there'll be some who would like to help you in your campaign. You and your campaign.
Try that again, 'cause that's a really nice approach.
Right, Harry, for those who've been watching the program, I'm sure there are some who would like to help. Can you give them some suggestions? I hate to be practical, but right down to earth, what should people do?
Sure. First of all, call the number on the screen, 1-800-272-1776, and give us a hand. I'll take this message to every corner of the...
I think, Joan, that we need to do that again, because when you turn and respond, Harry, you probably should be doing it to the camera.
You're right.
And we're maybe giving out the wrong number. The 682 number?
Okay.
What's that?
I just need to give a different number. Okay.
Okay. Harry, there's got to be people watching the program who would like to help, just like I did. They want to dive in, they want to help you now because they see a brighter future, as I do. Give us some help here. What do you want people to do?
Yes, I'll be glad to take this message to every corner of the country, but first you can help me by calling 682... Yes. Okay, I'll pick it up. Right.
Go ahead.
You know what, Harry, I don't think you should actually give the number. I think you should just say, call the number on the screen.
Okay.
Or just say call.
Okay.
The number will be on the screen. I think that is...
They
Okay.
don't have to remember, and they can
Yeah.
change the number.
Okay.
Harry, lots of the people watching, all right, let's hope a lot of the people watching the program would really like to help you in your campaign. They see a brighter future. Better give us some help. What do you want people to do?
Well, I'll be glad to carry this message to every corner of the country, but you can help. Give us a call at the number on the screen and give us a hand with contributions, with help. You can also write letters to the editor of local newspapers, to Time, Newsweek, call into television shows, call into radio shows, call in shows, and tell them that there is an alternative this year. There is a way to vote for smaller government. You don't have to choose between the two evils that are offered to you. Get a copy of Why Government Doesn't Work. It's full of issues that you can present to people in radio shows. This is going nowhere.
Actually, it's not necessarily going nowhere. I think it needs a little more passion. That's all.
That's true.
Okay, don't go too long on it.
No, I know.
Passion.
Yeah, it doesn't need to go too long. You're right.
You were going great. Okay. All right, Harry, tell me. We've got people out there, I'm sure, who have been
Take it again, one more time.
You ready?
Yes, sir.
Harry, look, there's got to be people out there who've listened to us for half an hour here, and I hope to goodness we've changed some people around, want to help. Tell them what to do. Okay, tell people how they can help.
Good. First of all, call the number on the screen, because that'll give you information on the campaign and how you can help us. Ooh. Okay. I'll pick it up at mine. Okay. Let me have a moment here to collect myself.
No problem.
I'm getting deeper and deeper into the hole and I can't get out.
So there were these three surgeons who operated on. Have you heard about the fat ballerina had to wear a 3-3? Jesus.
Okay.
I'm into fat jokes.
All right. I'm into fit jokes. Here we
All
go.
right, Harry, look. A lot of people have been watching the program. Some of them, we hope, have been turned around. They would like to hear from you. What can they do to help, really? Right down to earth.
The first thing you can do is to call the number on the screen. We'll send you information on the campaign, including a lot of tips of how you can help get this word out. I'll carry the message to every corner of the country, but you can help. You can help with your money, you can help with your moral support, and you can help by talking it up. Call into radio call shows. Call into television shows, write letters to the editor of newspapers. Let people know that there's an alternative to repeal the income tax, to get the government out of Social Security, to restore sanity to our cities, to reduce government to the absolute minimum possible. How was that?
That's good.
No, I'm sorry.
Bye. 5, 4, 3, 2.
There's a great deal that you can do. First of all, decide what is it you want. Do you want smaller government? Then vote for smaller government. If you want it enough, then call the number on the screen and help us get it. I'll carry the message to every corner of the country, but there's so much you can do to help by talking this up, by letting people know that there is an alternative, writing letters to newspapers, calling into talk shows, anything that you can do to let people know that there is a way that we can free ourselves from the income tax, free ourselves from this Social Security system that's about to go bankrupt, free ourselves from the turmoil of the inner cities. We can have a better America. We can make America a free country again. It's going to take your help, your money, your moral support, everything that you can do to help me. I'll carry the message. You give me the wherewithal to do it. Screwed up the last line.
No, but what was great about this whenever you're ready, I won't give you a countdown. Just start
Okay.
when you're ready.
The first thing you have to do is decide what is it you want. Do you want smaller government? Do you want an America without an income tax, without the government with its hands all over your Social Security, with the government creating problems in the I'm sorry, I'm getting mixed up between the negative and the positive. Just keep rolling. Here we go. The first thing you have to decide is what is it you want? Do you want smaller government? Do you want an America without an income tax? Do you want an America without the government having its hands all over your Social Security? If you do, there's so much you can do to help. Call the number on the screen. We'll send you information about the campaign. We'll tell you how you can help. In the meantime, write letters to newspapers. Call into talk shows. Let people know this alternative exists. Let them know that they're wasting their vote if they vote for anyone who would bring them larger government, if they would vote for anyone who is not on the side of what they want. Vote for Harry Browne, the Libertarian candidate, and you're telling the world that you do want smaller government, an end to the income tax, and an end to government in your lives.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Dole, or dole, dole, dole.
A little higher, a little more passion.
A little more passion, like dole, it's a fruit, dole. Don't vote for a fruit, dole. I think it stands for pineapple, doesn't it? Dole.
Good, thanks. That's good. Okay.